Welcome, everyone. This is the OnAgency podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Patrick, and we have special guests today, Lou and Daniel from Bandolier. We interview marketing agency founders and owners on this show, and every week we're going to dive into their personal lives, their stories, their businesses, and what keeps them up at night. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on this episode of OnAgency.
Craig, this is going to be fun. So I've known this agency for a little while now, and it's been fun to watch them. I connected with Daniel Stone several months ago, and we've just been having good conversations. So this is an agency that I feel like we have a little bit of royalty, right? They're a 3-time Ad Age Small Agency of the Year.
All right.
They've worked with companies TikTok, Facebook, Tito's, Roto-Rooter, Old Spice, Walmart. You may not have heard of any of those folks, but they're not insignificant. And one of the early conversations that I had with Dan, as a matter of fact, the first conversation that I had with him, we made the Chicago connection, and right off the bat, he's like, "Hey, do you like Malort? Are you a Malort fan?" And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. And he was dumbfounded that I didn't know about Malort. So, after that, Dan, and we didn't talk about this. So I looked it up because I didn't know what it was, right? And you were like, it's a total Chicago tradition. And so I looked it up, and it is, here's what I found. It is a Chicago tradition and a rite of passage, often used as a hangover cure. It has full-bodied flavor, taste of pencil shavings, citrus zest, old battery dust, and earwax. So I totally understand, Dan, why you wanted me to try that. It's fantastic.
But, you make me sound like an awful person.
No, I think it was fantastic. But I mean, you're right. It's a Chicago thing, which I don't know what that says about Chicago, but anyway, it's good to have you guys here. Thanks for making the time. And Lou, good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Did you say burnt tire? Was burnt tire included in that list?
No, old battery dust and earwax. But I mean, if you want to add burnt tire, that we could update the wiki.
So yeah, thank you guys for having us on. We really appreciate it.
And so you guys are you both in Austin?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we're in Austin, Texas.
You're right down the street from Craig, who was just telling us about the beautiful fall day that you guys are having.
That's right.
Yeah. People from Chicago say right down the street. I'm in Dallas, so
a few hours,
3 hours north of where these guys are. What part of Austin are you all in?
So our office is located right in downtown Austin. We're in it's not quite historic building, but we have a house that's, about 120 years old, which is old for this area.
Yeah. So is that towards the east side?
We're right near the Capitol. So
okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right snap dap in the center.
Yeah, cool. I host an event there on the first day of South by Southwest for talent acquisition, recruiting, community leaders every year since 2010.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to meet up.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I'm there for 2 or 3 days, and I usually rent a place for several speakers to stay at while we're there. So, in the beginning, South by Southwest was very concerned that we were advertising that we were there for South by Southwest, hosting our own separate event, and very quickly they got to the place where we were the only content for recruiting and HR and talent acquisition. And a ton of people, a ton of employers are there looking for talent. So they're like, Oh yeah, it's cool. You guys can be with us. So it worked out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So guys, talk a little bit about I don't know the backstory, how you guys got together, how, why Bandolier Media is the name, backgrounds. Talk a little bit about, kind of your backgrounds and how you came together and what Bandolier is all about.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Lou and I used to work together, and we worked at a media company. It was a small family company, and it was a cool company. And I started taking guitar lessons because I got like a Groupon, and I brought my guitar to the office one day, and I had this tiny, it was like, if you've seen the TV show The Office, it was like Ryan's office in the annex. It was like a broom closet. And I was trying to play this song, and Lou saw me struggling, and he came in and played the song, and then I sang it. And we just kind of picked up this little friendship of hey, on breaks, let's kind of play some songs.
Just like The Office.
Yeah. Well, jump a few years ahead, our friendship got stronger. Well, we ended up concepting this idea for a country music song called Beer Pong Anthem. And we knew at the time, they were playing beer pong. We have a district in Austin called 6th Street, which is like a miniature version of Bourbon Street. And there was all these beer pong tournaments, and all the fraternity and sororities were having beer pong tournaments. And I was like, gosh, there has to be an official song that people play before an end. There's no beer pong song. And so we came up with Beer Pong Anthem. And
don't look it up, by the way.
Yeah, don't look it up.
That's amazing.
And
Is there a music video?
Well, yeah, there is.
Unfortunately, yes.
But I had this idea, and then I told Lou, and then that night, Lou went home, recorded it on his iPhone, and came back and goes, "Here's a song." And it was I loved it, Lou. It was the most beautiful. It was very campfire-y, melodic. I'll sing a little. It was It was Friday afternoon, just got out of class. Because the weekend's here. And anyways, but the chorus
he's
was
not doing it justice. But I will say that the first version of it was it was not an anthem by any means. It was like a acoustic, I think my headspace was not in party mode, that's for sure. And so we had that version that we ended up connecting with a real country performer, and he sort of turned it into said anthem. So it became a little bit more intense.
Right. And I think what we realized, I started connecting the dots and reaching out to friends, and people in the industry were like, you kind of have something here. And I learned then my songwriting career ended, my music marketing career started, and I learned how to market and get a song on the radio. And it's all about, for a song like this, it was all about the marketing and promotion. And, Lou and I continued to work on this, and I ended up flying out to Las Vegas on my credit card, kind of started maxing out my credit card. And I met with the World Series of Beer Pong, who said, "Hey, we want to get involved in the song." And then we ended up getting a corporate sponsor for the song, where this group said, "Hey, we hear you guys are putting all these beer pong tournaments. You have this cool song." And the marketing director said to me, "I would like my product to be on every beer pong table in America." And I don't know why I was like, okay, we could do that. Don't know what I was thinking. And they sponsored our song. And in exchange, they said, "Hey, social media is getting pretty popular. We want you guys to run our social media for a few months in exchange for us sponsoring your song." And this was 2013, 2014. And then
I'm going to chime in real quick, Dan. So before we connected with them, we were promoting this, like Dan mentioned, we were promoting the song through the traditional means, radio and all that sort of stuff. And we found that there was definitely a bit of a system in place where, obviously the big record labels, they have all the money, they have all the, control pretty much. But also it was a small little song, so we didn't expect much. So we started turning to social media and creating just unique content to promote the song and the idea and all that sort of stuff. And so that brand, who Dan will reveal here shortly, they were like, we're seeing things you're doing on social media. Like, would you all consider doing that for a brand, like outside of the project that you're doing? And Dan, you can go ahead and follow up to that.
Yeah, and that company is Twang Beer Salt, who ended up being one of our first clients at Bandolier Media. Patrick, you asked where the name came from. Well, in order to upload our song to iTunes, we needed to come up with a name, and it was the only thing preventing a name for our record label, and it was the only thing preventing us from uploading the song. So I think, Lou, it took you like a few hours to come up with the name Bandolier Records, right?
Yeah, I started looking up like Western themed stuff and just like trying to figure out what would be that was something that would sound cool, but also was relevant to country music and stuff like that. And so Bandolier is obviously the leather strap that holds bullets. And
I think it's cool. You know, it's funny, right? The art and the science of naming a company, right? I mean, as you have a company, you have an idea, you have a concept of, all right, well, what's the personality and the persona that you want to embody, right? And I mean, it sounds like you guys got to it pretty quickly, but for every company, almost every company in the world, right, the road to getting to a name is littered with discards, right? This doesn't work, or that doesn't work, or you start with a foreign language, right, to make it sound a little bit more exotic, and that doesn't work, or it's taken, and then ultimately you wind up with what ends up being the perfect name, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, Chewbacca, one of my favorite characters, has an awesome bandolier, and I was like, that's so cool. Like, who wouldn't want to have something that pays homage to Chewbacca?
That's amazing.
Company name.
So fast forward to today, right? I mean, you look at all of the music that is created, right, for TikTok and all the memes and all of the artists that are really discovered through social media, right? Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you guys were kind of at the forefront of that. You created the song, social media was starting to explode. You guys found a channel for it. I mean, that sounds like pioneers to me.
It's interesting how at that time music wasn't as such a big part of like social media, because I feel like now sounds are such a big thing and music is like involved in all bits of content. And so I secretly have this idea that like someday in the future we'll like just like plug Beer Pong Anthem into something that's like, how now you'll come across a song, you're like, oh, this is cool, and then you'll go back and it's like, this thing was made in like 2010, like what, how did I not hear about that, right? And it's like, I just want to like subtly plug Beer Pong Anthem, even though that beer pong isn't such a big thing anymore. It would just be funny if all of a sudden it became a trend or something. We're
gonna have to include that in the show notes, right? And a link. Jerry will have to include a link in that in the description of the and look at Dan. Dan's like, no, thank you.
We should play it in the outro of this episode.
We should actually do that. Everything on TikTok's a throwback now anyway, right?
Yeah.
It's all Joy Division, and right. So I think Ping Pong Anthem fits right in. It's perfect.
I mean, it's part of the story.
But Ping Pong Anthem does sound cool, but yeah, Beer Pong Anthem.
Did I say Ping Pong Anthem? Beer Pong Anthem. Yeah.
That's the sequel.
Yeah, that'll be the part 2 to the
exactly. Funny.
So guys, so that was the beginning of it, and fast forward to 2024, you guys have built kind of a business around this, right? That was the genesis, and it's kind of evolved into what you are now. Talk a little bit about where you guys are and your team and how you've evolved, and even some of the challenges that you've experienced, because as you guys were starting to grow, right? I mean, right in the middle of that, between when you started and now, was a big, massive pandemic that probably rocked your world like it rocked everybody else's. So kind of talk about the evolution from there to where you're at now, and how you got here.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of steps along the way. One really powerful piece is meeting our third partner, George Ellis, who wasn't able to make it today. But at the time, we kind of wrote the song. Twang Beer Salt hired us, and a few other brands started hiring us. A lot of CPG food brands that were kind of challenger brands saw what we were doing and saw that we were kind of doing some interesting stuff on social media, and and we built a pretty nice business of about a staff of 4 people, and we set up shop, and we were this social media agency doing everything from content creation to community management to influencer management. And then we met a gentleman who had a traditional agency background. He worked at Leo Burnett in Chicago, and he said, "Look, you guys are really doing some interesting things, and I think you could be doing bigger projects, bigger video projects." And we didn't really know anything about that world or about that industry. And so he kind of showed us, we did some test projects together, and we took to it very early on. We immediately started doing bigger projects. And what we found, what we noticed is a lot of people in the traditional advertising space, they found us very interesting because, we had all of our learnings came from what we practiced and what we did on social media. And they were like, "God, this is really interesting. We're normally working on spots for linear cable or print media, and I never really thought about it that way." And so from there, we started becoming more of a traditional agency, and we started getting more traditional like media and digital spots and things like that. And then we started receiving RFPs, which we really didn't know. That was interesting to get RFPs because we didn't know how to properly apply for an RFP. We didn't know anything about how to work with the procurement department, how to get standard rates, how to standardize everything. And so we had to learn really quick. And gosh, I mean, Patrick, I think you know me. I'm very good to reaching out to people, just saying, "Hey, do you mind explaining this to me?" And Craig, you mentioned South by. The first 2 years of South by, they have this thing at South by called the mentor sessions, and they're like these 15-minute sessions. And I signed up for every one, and you have to sign up way in advance, or they get filled up. And it's done for like 3 or 4 days. And the volunteers in that section got so familiar with my face, they were like, "Look, if no one shows up to the mentor, we're gonna have you go, like, because we know you're like loving these and learning." And I just had a notebook, and I was asking the most basic questions. And I think people realize, like, hey, this guy really wants to learn. Like at the time, I was late 30s. I never worked in a traditional advertising agency, and I had to learn. And so I was just desperate for knowledge and information. And for the most part, everyone was just extremely cool about helping explain things to me.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I think that with small agencies, right, and there's been a proliferation of them, not only since the pandemic, but I think social media, right? After the first advent of social media, where people became social media savvy, and right, they, and that was in demand, they put out their shingle. But creating, growing, and managing a successful agency, right, is not a skill set, right, that you go to school for, right? You got to kind of come up through that. And if you don't, then what do you do? And, you go back to the RFP process. I mean, there's an approach, there's a methodology to creating a response to an RFP, right? And submitting, responses and the approach to the pitch and all of that. And you only get that through experience. And
Right.
Probably the experience is you fail any number of times until you actually can get it right, unless you get lucky, or you're incredibly savvy already. But the community around small agencies, I think has, because there's so many in the kind of the same boat, right, that it has become very supportive, right? And
Absolutely, 100%.
right, and one of the things that I've seen with you is you're very good at, hey, you know what? You have this need. This person has expertise or a connection or whatever, and you're good at putting them together. And I sense that the larger community, right, of small agencies is like that, necessarily so, because you're rooting for each other. Well, there's it's almost like frenemies, right? A little co-opetition.
Yeah, yes and no, but it doesn't need to be that way. I mean, there's so many businesses out there.
Room for everybody, right?
There's room for everybody, and then
Yeah.
also, I met a new production partner in Austin today, and I mean, this community is so small. This production partner, these owners both have small kids. I see them on the soccer field or at volleyball practice. Like, we all want to help each other. Life is can be hard. Being a small business owner can be very hard. So whatever I could do to help somebody uh, create an opportunity or make more money, I mean, I feel like that's my civic duty to do that, right? I mean, if you see someone has a flat tire on the side of the road and they're having problems, what do? You pull over, you help them, right? And if you could pass on some knowledge of like, hey, here's how you could do this in the future. That's great. That's cool. That's awesome. I mean, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked a little bit about the challenges, right? What are the biggest lessons that you've learned through the challenges that you faced?
Lou, you want to? I have some things I could say, but Lou, you want to chime in on some of that?
I think Dan's probably best equipped, but I'll touch on a couple of things that are just for on the creative side and just on. I think growing pains. I think that as the projects get bigger and you start stacking on more, I feel like at this point we have so many things going on. And at the end of the day, we're only, we're 3 owners and we have a great team, but we're still very involved in a lot of the day-to-day. I mean, well, in all the day-to-day. So, I mean, I'm still, even when we started the company, I was like doing the photography, doing the video, doing the content, like running around, posting. Like I was the one doing the management on the accounts and all that stuff. So it'd be like 7 p.m. and I'm texting Dan like, dude, I need a photo of this thing. Like, do you know where I can get a photo of this? And he's like, just come to my house. And I'm like, okay. And so I feel like even though a lot has changed, a lot is still very similar as it was before, because I'm still driving around, doing the same thing. Like, because sometimes I just have an idea in my head that I'm just like, I know exactly what it's supposed to look like and I know how to execute it. So, and Dan and George will be like, just, have somebody else do that. I'm like, no, I think I'm just going to do it myself. And then, I'm running around town and having to manage a bunch of stuff. So I think that as we've gotten bigger, more projects come in, and there's a lot more weight on those projects. And so because of that, it's difficult to balance sometimes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like we're still really hooked on it. Like we're so passionate about it, and it's very exciting for us, and it's still fun. So it's kind of like double-edged sword.
Lou, do you think, so sorry, go ahead.
No, that was it.
I was just going to say, look, it's allocation resource, right? I mean, for me, it's cash flow management. That's the hardest. That's the thing that keeps me up at night. And for Lou, it's just creative time management. We're fortunate. I recommend. I see a lot of small agencies run into the same issue. We're fortunate enough to have a brilliant project manager that we have given authority to wrangle us in and to keep us managed, to give us orders, to dial us back. She has 100% authority to say, wait, you guys have to stop. You've put too much on your plate. I am potentially seeing a train wreck if Lou, you don't do this today, and if Dan, you don't do that today. It's very important. And we listen to her. Nothing's worse. I see some other agency owners that don't listen to their team, and I'm like, well, you're paying. Like, why are you paying them then? Why are you having them come in to tell you what to do, and you're not taking their advice? I mean, there's definitely plenty of people way smarter than me that I would love to have come and help us figure out and do things for us. So
Entrepreneurs are control freaks, right? I mean,
I'm not a control freak.
Well, but
I want help.
you seem like someone who realizes his limitations, right? And so that's the mark of a good founder, a good owner. And we all need our wranglers for sure.
Yeah. So as you guys are growing and you're evolving and you look at your team, right? The skill sets that you had, right, you developed right from early on have evolved, right? Because the technologies have evolved, the channels have evolved, the ways of engagement have changed. So when you think of the talent that you need to surround yourself, right, to get to the next level, what's the right? What are the skill sets that you're looking for? What's the talent that you're looking for?
Totally. Yeah. The first thing, they have to have a positive mindset attitude, right? They need to be someone that um, is happy, in their glasses has to be, half full. We want to have someone that has a positive outlook on life, and that just aligns with our viewpoint, where we treat everyone with respect, that we're working together in harmony, and that's very important. If we can't pass that, then it's not going to work. As far as the skill sets go, it's always for the young people, because we love bringing in young people. The first thing is, hey, let's look at what you do in college. Where'd you go to college? What classes did you like? Where were you challenged? I love it. I love to hear about people's failures, and how they evolved and how they identified, hey, this is where I failed. Here's what I've done differently. I fail every day, and if you're not failing, you're not moving forward, right? So I like that idea. As far as particular skills of what they have, I mean, look, it comes down to three things. I'm inspecting for behavior, attitude, and technique, right? Do they have a good attitude? Do they have a good behavior? Meaning, will they be punctual? Will they be able to manage themselves remotely? Will they be good with a client? Will they be good on set? And as far as the technique, usually, honestly, for me, I've got to see some things they've done, and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a work project that they've done. It could be like, hey, here's this little side thing I did, or you know what? I'm really into welding. Like, I welded this whole thing in my backyard. I'm like, wow, you've got good technique. I like to inspect their attention to detail and things like that.
Yeah, that whole idea of failure, right? I mean, you read business books and you listen to successful leaders. They talk about failure and where the greatest learnings come from failure. At the same time, people are deathly afraid of failure, right? Because it's almost a reflection of of them in terms of their worth, right, or their goodness, or who they are, right, as opposed to just risk taking.
Well,
I mean,
I was going to say, I have a bit of a different answer than Dan, because I'm on the creative side. I really, kind of in the same note as what y'all are talking about, like, we sort of encourage people on the creative side to just go big, like no big is too big. And if we have to dial it back down, that's fine. But I'd rather be on that end than on the opposite end.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather be shocked and be like, you just went too far. And just more in the sense of like, maybe that's like a $3 million spot and we have a very small budget or something like that. But it really gives an opportunity to let them shine and do their thing and really just explore their creativity and not feel like they have to follow all these parameters and all these guidelines. And then we get to really dissect it and go through it and really there's no wrong answer in those scenarios. I think that it's like everything is the right answer for the most part. It's just like, how do you dial it in? How do you sculpt it? And then get to a place where it's like, okay, cool, this was great, but this is sort of where we want to end up. And then I would say the other thing, because social media is such a huge part of our business, is it really helps when people they have their finger on the pulse with things that are going on. It's very challenging because even I have to keep my finger on the pulse. And like, since we're very busy these days, it's like there were days where I could be on social media all day and it was technically research because I'm actually having to learn all the stuff that's going on. But it takes a lot of time, like especially on TikTok these days, you can lose 4 hours and just like, what just happened? Like, it's just like a time suck. So you have to be very intentional about it. So it helps whenever there's younger people, younger creatives that are already just in that world. It's kind of like their off time. Maybe they have a chance to go be in there. So they already know what's happening. And that's why it's good for us too. Like when we put something out and one of them sees it and they're like, oh, I saw that thing, that was awesome. And it's like, okay, that's very affirming and validating, because like we're trying our hardest to stay on par with like what's going on everywhere, but it's always changing, right? There's like new trends every day. There's just new techniques and new functions and features. So that would be,
it's always, I mean, it's a constant move, like just, pop culture, right? Trends and pop culture has only been amplified and accelerated with TikTok and Instagram and right, these other channels. and JD like we'll bust out a meme or something like that. And I'm like, what? I don't know what that means. What does that mean? And she's just like, what?
Mhm.
How old are you? How out of touch are you? But I mean, how do you even keep up?
No, it's interesting that you just called TikTok pop culture. I mean, TikTok in general is pop culture, but I think the things on TikTok are shorter than that. I mean, feel like pop culture has a bit more lifespan. Am I crazy? Also, on the creative side, Lou, you're right. There's a million discarded ideas, but they all lead to something, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. I think it's like pop bites, maybe like you get like little tiny moments, but it's sort of like a hit or miss because the good thing about having a smaller agency is that we can sort of turn on a dime and do something real fast and jump on that. When you're dealing with bigger agencies that have a lot of layers of approval, and by the time you get to that approval, that trend is done, right? And so like the last thing you want, and honestly, something we see a lot is like somebody's going to use like a trend in a spot, and the trend it's been done for like months, and you're like that was not a good call, obviously. So typically social media is best used on social media, not for like a Super Bowl spot or something, unless you're just like making it right at the last minute and you get the timing down perfect. But yeah, because of that, it's one of those things where like you either have to jump on it on time or just kind of forfeit it, because then it's obvious that you're sort of you're not really on top of things. But
Yeah. I want to go back to just a side comment that Dan you made about other businesses, and I think that you both are entrepreneurs, right? And I think Bandolier Media is one thing, and I think that you guys have a lot of other things. But I want to talk about Roasty Buds coffee because I have it right here, and
Nice.
I've been telling these guys about it, all morning long. And I keep, Dan, you keep correcting me, right? I keep saying toasty buds or tasty buds, and I keep doing that because it's like subliminal because it's super good. I enjoy the Mexican coffee or the Mexican chocolate coffee, which is fantastic. Thank you. But talk a little bit about that. And I know JD, we have to wrap up soon, but talk a little bit about Roasty Buds.
For sure. Lou, do you want to tell the origin story?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. At the end of the day, I think when we have clients, we learn a lot through our clients, and sometimes when you have a client, you have to learn any and everything about that client and about their world. And usually, it's sometimes it's more interesting than other times, and sometimes it's just like I don't want to know any of this, and I'm learning it against my will. But then there's moments where you find something like in this case, coffee. That was really interesting to me, and when you're doing the content side and the creative, like you have to really learn it, and you can't pretend to learn it. Like that's not something you can fake. So through the content that we were making with our client, essentially we had some series that we came up with and things like that. And because of that series, there was a moment of like a spicy coffee discussion, and we proposed the idea of potentially coming out with a spicy coffee or something of the sort, and sort of making it like a promotional item. And he loved the idea, but he's also like, that's not really part of my core audience, so maybe we just like put that in our back pocket or something. And so it never ended up happening. And then fast forward to I guess maybe 2.5 years ago, we were throwing ideas around about product development and things that we could make that was our own, because we've learned so much over the years that we know how to promote it. We know how to, we have a pretty good eye for design, and we have a lot of good partners. So we thought, what's something that we sort of already have built in to our system, and that was Mike, who's at Cube. He's our head roaster. And essentially we told him, hey, remember we were talking about spicy coffee that many years back? And he was like, yes, I remember. We said, so what would you think if we came out with a spicy coffee and you sort of helped us like source the beans and figure out the best way to make it actually good, right? And so we use premium beans. So it's not like a cheap flavored coffee. It's actually premium flavored coffee, and the flavors are actually very well thought out and everything. And so he was totally down, and that was really the inception of everything, where it was either going to be a home run or it was going to be a flop. And so when we finally got our first samples in and we tried everything, we kind of looked around at each other and we're like, oh, this is actually going to work, right? Like this is a real thing. And And then
And keep in mind,
following that, the Mexican chocolate was sort of like a follow-up to the spicy because of the success of spicy had, which was based on my upbringing. I lived on the border, or I grew up on the border, and so it felt like a personal piece to like have something that's authentic, which is what you're drinking there. And yeah, I feel like that became our top seller. It's a huge favorite, and yeah, so that's where we are now.
Yeah, it's amazing, Craig. We got to get you some of this. I mean, it is amazing, and I actually am ready to reorder. So, Dan, I need to get with you.
Awesome.
Hey guys, thanks so much for taking time to chat with us today. I think that what you guys are doing is really cool. I would encourage anybody that's listening to go check out your work. It's fantastic, and so thank you, and best of luck to you guys.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Daniel and Lou, before you hop off, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find us at bandoliermedia.com. You could go to our LinkedIn page there and connect with us on LinkedIn. And then for Roasty Buds, you can go to roastybuds.com. And if you put in the promo code Roasty20, you'll get 20% off your first order.
Right.
Casual
Awesome.
promo, and at Roasty Buds on all social media as well.
Awesome.
Gotta hit the socials.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for listening to this episode of OnAgency, a podcast presented by Mahalo Hub. Your hosts were Patrick Rooney and Craig Fisher, with producer JD, engineer Brian Ross, and music by Steve Stetler. If you want to hear more, please like, subscribe, and review. Questions and comments can be sent to jd@mahalohub.com.